everyone. Today is a special interview with the CTO of UND, Unification, Paul Hodgson. Today we're going to be talking about more of the technical side of what Unification does, more into like what are work chains and how does this hybrid blockchain, how is it different from others, and specifically what are beacons, how do they work, how can you integrate a beacon into your enterprise or SME type of business. And we're going to talk a little bit about what this Mother Haiku UVCID and the capsule and their wallet looks and will look like when we get started in Q4. So welcome, Paul. It's great to have you here today.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Great. So yeah, we're just going to start off right away, not waste anybody's time. So the idea of a work chain is pretty much the premise of the whole entire project of UND. So we know that work chains are kind of like a private blockchain or are private blockchains, which can then go into a main chain, which is why it's a hybrid model. Can you just kind of give us an overview about work chains and how they actually work?
Well, a work chain it's effectively a private blockchain network or distributed ledger. It can theoretically be any kind of blockchain underlying blockchain technology, so Go Ethereum or Hyperledger or any of the other numerous blockchains out there. So it's for an organization or an entity that wants to have their own little private network or large private network, but they also want to increase the integrity and the trust of that network by submitting the block header hashes to our main chain. So our main chain in effect becomes like a trunk, and these work chains are branches off of that. So we have an SDK which developers, organizations can use to spin up their own work chain. And then we have additional software like the WRKchain Oracle, which controls like the flow of their hashes of their block headers and writing those to our main chain.
Nice. So if I'm a business, I'm an enterprise, I'm new to the whole blockchain idea, and you're saying things like hashes and headers, and I'm probably like, what does that even mean? Can you kind of give me an example of what are those things, more in their terminology, because like if I am a small enterprise business, I'm maybe not sure about using blockchain. So why would I use UND or WRKchain? And what are hashes and headers? So I can maybe just give an example so that I can understand it a little bit better.
Okay. Well, a hash is basically it's a one-way. How do I explain it? It's like a string of numbers and letters, and you have these algorithms, these little bits of code. But if you put something into that code, it will generate the same set of strings and numbers for that set of data every time you put it in. So it's a one-way thing. Then if one thing changes within that data that you're inputting into that algorithm, then the whole hash changes. Right. So it's a one-way conversion to this string of letters and numbers. So that hash is basically, you could think of that as a unique identifier for that set of data. That data is arbitrary. It could be anything. Whatever is input is always going to have that same output. So it could be a list of email addresses, it could be an image, it could be a scan of a passport or anything like that. Yeah. As long as nothing changes from that original set, that same hash, that same string will be produced every time. So what you can do is you can take that hash and seal it on, for example, the work chains. Every block in this work chain will have these hashes that are generated, and those hashes can then be written to our main chain. So it kind of seals those identities, if you like.
Yeah, and then they can't change it, obviously, because with blockchains, they're immutable.
Yes.
So, with the private blockchain, so when you have a work chain, you can probably still change some things, correct?
Theoretically, yes, but since those hashes have been written to our main chain, then that's going to be obvious. People are going to be able to see that, and we have software that can bridge those two to validate the blocks. So they could say, okay, let me have a look at block number 97, and the validation software that we've got can go and pick that block from their work chain and then compare it to the hashes that have been written into our main chain. And if they've changed that, if they've got some dodgy validators who are changing data on their blockchain, then that validation software will pick that up. It will say, no, these don't match.
But it is a permissioned blockchain, right? So if I am, if we make a mistake before we post it to the main chain, we can still technically change that, right? So you can make a mistake on a private permission blockchain first, and then when you're sure and you've checked everything, you can then put it onto the main chain, right?
Yeah, I guess that's completely dependent upon the WRKchain operators. Yeah.
No, but that could be a good thing, right? I mean,
yeah, essentially, yeah. Once it's written to the main chain, though, that's it. It's kind of immutable. Yeah.
That's perfect. I mean, because that's what the whole idea with hybrid, right? It's permission and private. So yeah, maybe only a few people have to. There's still probably going to be validators within the work chain, but at least that way, if they do make a mistake, those people, if it's a team of teachers doing reviews of thesis papers, can come in and go, "Oh, we did make a mistake," and then correct it before we post it to the main chain, so that you actually still have. If you're a business, you're not like, oh crap, we made a mistake, we can never change it.
Yeah.
No, get a chance to, if that ever happens, and I'm not saying business are going to do that, but it could happen, and every business has human error. So this is a really cool way to kind of bridge the gap of like just going straight blockchain, and you're like kind of SOL to redo everything. So that's really interesting. Yeah. Very cool. So in terms of work chains, if I'm a company, why, what kind of companies are you guys are focused? You say you're focused on like enterprise. So why should they choose UND, for example, opposing to maybe like another blockchain? So kind of give the really cool parts of the tech for UND that would make someone want to come to you guys.
Okay, we're offering the tools for them to spin up their own little private network, or it could potentially be a large network. So the choice of that network is effectively down to them. If they want to implement Go Ethereum as their network, they can do, potentially Hyperledger or any other network as their own private network, as their work chain. So they have the freedom to do that. And then the Unification main chain, the UND main chain, like I said earlier, it becomes like the trunk that they can dump everything into. All of their work chain hashes, the header hashes, as we talked about earlier, can be dumped into there. But they have the freedom of choosing whatever technology they want to base their own network on.
Very cool. That's very cool, actually. So a lot of people have talked about things like I've asked groups of UNDers. I was like saying, what's part of the tech that you guys don't really understand or you want to learn more about? And a lot of people are asking about the beacons, like you've talked about, and connecting to the main chain. And some people said, like, what does that have to do with UND tokens? So can you kind of like spin that all together so everyone can see a bigger picture for it?
Okay, let's start with the beacons. Beacons are kind of a cool thing. I mean, these are targeting organizations and entities who don't necessarily want or need a full-blown blockchain network for themselves. Perhaps they've got some a database that they've been, they've had for years. They've had this database, but they want to maybe increase the integrity of that data and the trust of that data for themselves and for their users. So what a beacon is, it's a piece of software that we're developing that I guess kind of mimics the process of WRKchain submitting hashes. So what they can do is select data from their database to be hashed, which is these one-way conversions into these strings of letters and numbers, and then via the beacon they can submit those hashes to our main chain. And again, we would have some validation software that they could implement on top of that, which would allow their users or their administrators or anybody who they would like to have access to validate these hashes and validate the data to say, look, this data is, we're retaining the integrity of this data. It's not been changed. It's not been tampered with. Everything's cool. It's nice. So yeah, the beacon is a way for them to do that without having to implement a full-blown blockchain themselves.
And then how does So go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to tie in the UND aspect. It's basically a way of paying for the service. So a WRKchain operators or beacon operators, any organization that wants to use this software to write that those hashes to the main chain and have them sealed within the main chain, they pay a transaction fee. So it's kind of like gas, I guess. You know, each time they submit something to the main chain, the validators, the operators of the main chain will get reimbursed for doing that, for processing all that data. So they pay UND, and then the UND gets distributed to the validators of the main chain.
Right, and we talked about the validators before. I'll just go over that. It's 96 wallets. The top 96 wallets of people that are staking their tokens. They get a chance to be a validator. They probably need something like an AWS server or a really nice, strong computer at home to run a node to validate transactions. But every 72 hours that changes. So basically, there could be technically, if someone sold a lot of their tokens or people bought a lot of tokens from the market, changes in validators every 72 hours, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'm a business. I want to, I have this huge, massive SLQ database or SQL database, sorry, and we're looking at unification as a way to get on chain without starting from scratch, right?
Okay.
Kind of gone over that. Maybe just give another example of, let's say, if you guys have healthcare already. So maybe you could touch on the healthcare side, because everyone's seen that big news about in Brazil, you got you have the healthcare system. So let's say I'm the healthcare system in Canada or somewhere else, and I have this huge system. How can I integrate UND maybe in a simple way, going on what you've talked about with the beacons and the WRKchain?
I guess that's dependent on the actual functionality that they're after. I mean, if they're wanting to prove, for example, that patient data hasn't been tampered with or something like that, or maybe it's a consortium of medical insurance and hospitals, and they want to ensure that this data hasn't been tampered with when they're exchanging between each other, then they could implement a beacon, for example. So patient records will be hashed up. This would all be, completely self-contained in their own private network. They would be able to tell, as with any database, they'd be able to allow access to whoever they want to. But these hashes they could be transferred through the beacon and written to the main chain. And then a patient or a hospital or an insurance company could then verify that this data hasn't been changed or duplicated. So, I mean, as far as what it entails, it would be downloading and installing the beacon software and SDK, and then configuring their database, their application backend to generate these hashes to send to the beacon. It's probably important to note that the beacon itself would never deal with raw data. It would only ever accept hashed data, completely anonymous hashed data.
Right. That's really cool. So, I mean, if I'm a business right now and I'm an enterprise and I'm thinking about doing this, how long would it take? I mean, once the main chain's up, how long would this probably take to implement?
I guess that depends on the complexity of their own data. But I mean, theoretically, a couple of hours. It wouldn't take long to spin up. Download the software, configure the software, and that's it. They're good to go.
Wow, it's really cool. So, I mean, it is a really easy. It's really something. It seems like it's quite easy for an enterprise company or organization, government organization even, to use this technology, and it's not a huge burden to learn all of this. It's kind of like you guys made it so you can just plug and play. I mean, is that correct?
That's what we're aiming for. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like I say, it is dependent upon the underlying data and the application. So it could take anything from hours to months to set up if it's an incredibly complex back-end system. But we're trying to make it as simple as possible. I mean, let's face it, blockchain it's an incredibly steep learning curve. It really is. I mean, it's one thing to speculate about tokens and coins and trade, but actually creating a network is a completely different kettle of bananas. It really is. So we realize this, we know this because we're doing it, and we don't want that burden of the steep learning curve to be passed on to other people. So we want to try and make it as simple as possible. So we're developing these SDKs and this software to kind of bridge all of this together. But like I say, obviously the underlying system could be a very complex system, so it could take longer to kind of customize all the software and make it work with that. But yeah, we want to make it as simple as possible because we know how difficult it is.
Yeah, it's really cool because it's like you guys are doing the thing that I've talked about this at actual conferences myself about this whole the complexity of blockchain kind of hindering adoption, like hindering a lot of the companies to actually just getting started because it's so much to learn first. And they're like, well, maybe we'll figure it out in a few years. This kind of gives them like the Amazon of it all to like do it right now. Like there's not much
Yeah,
holding back.
yeah. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. Yeah,
Awesome. Okay,
yeah,
so
it is complex.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that as well go into all this. One of them is called Mother. The other one is called Haiku. There's another part of it called the UVCID. And we also have this capsule and the wallet that goes all together with it called the Babel wallet. So I guess I'll just, lead you through this so everyone can understand what all those weird terms mean.
Okay.
But, you said that, and I've looked into this as well now, that the Mother is like this registration module. Can you kind of go over like how that actually works? What does the Mother mean?
Okay, so this is the kind of the data market subset of the project that we're doing as well. So so this is for organizations that would like to distribute data between each other, but it gives the users, the end of the day, the owners of that data, control over who is seeing that data and where it's going to. So the Mother aspect you're talking about, this is for example, an organization who has a load of data, they would like to distribute that data on the marketplace. They would need to register themselves with Mother. So Mother is this kind of all-seeing, overlooking. It's making sure that everybody's doing what they should be doing, basically. So anybody who wants to receive data or distribute data would need to register with Mother first. And this is effectively a smart contract that sits on the chain to control everything. So let's say, for example, there are some fitness companies. They have lots of data that they've gathered on users, and maybe they'd like to sell some of this data, put it on the marketplace. Now, let's say, for example, there's a university who's doing some research on fitness of people between the age of 20 and 30 in the New York area. Yeah. They would like to buy some of this data from these fitness companies. So what each of these organizations would do is install and register what we're calling the Haiku. Yeah. This is a software that would be used to control the kind of flow of data. And then they would configure the Haiku to say that we are publishing this subset of our data. The university will be able to see that and request that data from those. But it all flows through the user. So the user would see a request for data from a university. This university is wanting to see your data from these 3 fitness companies. Will you let them see it? And the user can say yes or no. Right. It's completely down to the user. If they say no, then that data is not going anywhere. It's not going to get transferred to the university. If they say yes, then the university can access their data and they'll be reimbursed for it. They can be paid in UND for sending that data. So the Mother is the kind of the overwatching eye. It's it's making sure that everybody's doing what they should be doing. Yep. The Haikus are the software that the data producers and the data requesters would install to kind of control the flow of data. And then the Babel that you mentioned is the, or Babel as I like to say, it's kind of the wallet front end that the user can use to see what data is going where and who's requesting data and say yay or nay. So yeah.
So it's
kind of a quick overview.
It's kind of like how they used to do surveys. Used to like call you up on your, like when I was a kid anyways, they'd call your mom up and be like, hey, we need like 12 to 14-year-old kids to come in and try all these new chips. Yeah. And you could say, yeah, okay, cool. You can have my son for an hour and I'll pay $50 to him. But now it's kind of like, okay, you don't even have to leave your house. We have all the data already and we're going to pay you. And you can decide like, sure, yeah, I don't care if you know that I'm fat and I'm 25 years old. Cool. Yes, you can share my data and I only go to the gym once a week. Sure. Yeah, you can share that too. And then at the end of the day, I'm getting UND tokens for it. So I'm actually getting reimbursed.
Yeah, yeah, that's quite a cool analogy with the survey. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And then the other part of it, so you have the haikus where there's the big organizations, but then what happens if I want to, and I've had this happen actually to me where someone got a copy of my passport and posted it online. Obviously there's, all different types of issues that could come up with that. But you guys have this system called the UVCID, which basically makes, an independent contract, which, also as a person, I can say, okay, these government organizations, for example, I can peer-to-peer say, yes, you can know that this is my passport, or no, you cannot know this is my passport as a certain person. Maybe it's a little bit different, but can you go over how that all works as well?
Yeah, so UVCID, it's like you say, it's a person-to-person transfer of more kind of personal data. Well, it doesn't have to be more personal data. It's just like individual data items.
Right.
So it could be anything from like an insurance certificate for your driving, your car insurance, or passport, or any kind of document or a piece of data that one person needs to send to another entity. UVCID is a kind of way that encrypts and ensures the identity is that person is who they say they are. So it's all done through it's based on the W3C specifications for decentralized ID and verifiable credentials.
Right.
So with the decentralized ID, because that's controlled through like a private key, so that that person is who they say they are when they sign something, and then that's the person who's receiving that can prove that that person is who they say they are, that they have sent that piece of documentation to them, and it is a valid piece of documentation.
Nice.
So the UVCID is it's a way for individuals to send individual pieces of data to individuals.
And also guarantees, like, for example, there's obviously a heap of issues in the world with identity theft.
Yes.
And I've seen this, and I've been victim to this whole identity thing on Telegram where people act like someone they're not. Pretty much if you're using UVCID, that's takes that whole issue away and off the table, because like, hey, cool, dude, you are Joel Kofshoff. Awesome. Send me a UVCID and actually prove it, because I've had even people in the UND chat come to me and say, hey, there's another Joel Kofshoff in Telegram telling me that you can sell me UND tokens and stuff.
That's right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a way of mimicking real world document transfer. So you sign a document and you send it to your lawyer, or you sign a lease on for renting a house or something, and you send that to the landlord. This is a way of kind of mimicking that, but in the digital world. But because it's all public-private key encryption, then it's a one-way thing. Since you're the only holder of that key, then it's pretty much guaranteed that anything that you sign can be proved that it's come from you. So
yeah, what's really funny? We're talking about this, and I had actually recently had someone forge my signature on a document and post it online. Won't get into that detail, but this actually happened to me in real life. And
that's not good.
everyone was like, well, how do you know it wasn't you? And I was like, I had to find the actual digital signature that I had made, that the document was copied from, all this stuff to just go through people. That was not me who did it. It was a copied signature. Now, if we had this software, if I had it on Babel on my phone, I could have been like, dude, like, this is my private key or my public key for my hash. Like,
exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you'd send the public key, and then you'd sign the document, and they'd be able to verify that it has actually come from you. So yeah, that's exactly right.
So that's, I mean, in my own personal life, that would actually be very useful already. In two ways: the Telegram fakesters and people creating fake documents, pretending that you've signed or done something that you haven't actually done. Super interesting. Honestly, it's very useful. That's when people talk about use case and we're talking about crypto, this is a huge use case because it solves a lot of the problems that are happening. Like, even when we're not talking about even enterprise, we're talking personal problems that you could come up with in crypto. This solves a lot of them, and the scammers won't be able to scam you anymore, which is another beautiful thing about the system. So, I mean, that's awesome. So then there's the whole idea. So all to encapsulate it all, there's this thing called a capsule. And it's like, I mean, I guess you could just kind of just touch on that a little bit. And I guess that's, brings it all together, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's the scary back end stuff that binds everything together. Yeah, the people that don't like, the things that people don't like to look at. Yeah.
Right. So it's like the back end system that no one really gives a crap about except for you guys. I'm not saying that, but like it's the stuff that no one really cares about. You know, they just want their stuff to work. They want them to, you know, I want my public key or my private key for my signature if I do a UVC ID. I want it just to work. I don't really care. You know, most people out there don't care, but the people that create the system, like Amazon has, I mean, obviously we see how big they became because of doing that back end system. So.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys are doing that now, and I mean that's why you guys should call it a capsule, because it takes all the different stuff and puts it all together, which I like
Yeah.
the wording for that. So yeah, that's pretty much you know, a pretty good overview of what the technology does. Is there anything else that I've missed that you would like to touch on, Paul?
Well, everything that we're doing so far is available on our GitHub repos. So we're releasing as frequently as possible. I'm going to be writing some Medium articles soon on the WRKchain SDK and the beacon stuff that we're doing. So those will be published over the next few weeks. Our testnet is up and running, which is kind of cool. We're proud of that. There's a lot of work been going into that. So again, we've got a Medium article covering some of the basics of the testnet, but we'll be releasing some more Medium articles covering it more in depth, you know, spinning up your own WRKchain and that sort of thing in the next few weeks.
That's very cool. I mean, where can, like, if I'm someone now who's like really interested in UND, where would I go to be able to start testing the testnet? I mean, you said there's GitHub. Is there anywhere specifically they can go and get started?
Yeah, the GitHub repos are a good place to start. So it's github.com/unification-com is the kind of main entry point. We've got the WRKchain SDK in there. We've got the Medium articles as well. So if you look for the Unification Foundation on Medium, there is an article there that I've written which gives a very basic overview of getting started on the WRKchain and that sort of thing. So, and there will be more in-depth articles as well coming, covering more of the SDKs and that sort of thing. So.
That's awesome. All right, so guys, that's going to be it. Won't take any more of your time. Thank you very much, Paul, for coming on today. This is Paul Hodgson from.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure. And so, guys, if you haven't done it yet, if you like the video, just click on that subscribe button and smash on a like for UND. Share it so that if you have any friends or companies that are, you know, interested in what we've been talking about, or if you need any more information, Paul, can you just at the end of this right now let people know where they can contact you if they want to ask any more questions? Is there a Twitter account, for example, that they can contact you at?
Yeah, there's the Unification Foundation Twitter account. There's the Telegram group. We've got the official Unification Telegram group.
Yep.
Unification.com has obviously all the links to all these various channels. So that's probably the main entry point, is to go to unification.com and spider out from there.
All right, so that's where you guys have to go. I'll leave some links in the description at the bottom of this video. So thanks again, Paul, and everyone have a great day.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.